Welcome back to the third episode of the Shot by Shot podcast. I'm here with my co-hosts, Alex, Oscar, and Ryan. Today we're going to be going over some 2022 movies, some recent phenomenons in cinema. We're going to be starting out with a draft, and then we're going to kick on through our top 10 of the year, maybe a little game involved. But I think today we're going to start with a draft, but we're going to get right into it, starting with the draft. I think Alex drew up an order from a randomizer. Did you want to read off that order for us, Alex?
The randomizer gave us me, then Will, then Oscar, then Ryan.
Perfect. Okay, so I think that's going to be the order. We're drafting 2022 movies. And here we go. Alex, you're on the clock.
Make it pretty quick, going with the best film of 2022. Black Adam. Nah, I'm kidding. Give me Babylon.
Respect. Babylon's a good pick.
Easily Babylon.
Yeah, for me, I think there's a lot of options I could go here, but I think this is kind of a pander pick, but also one of my favorites. I'm gonna go Matt Reeves, The Batman.
Great pick.
Interesting. I'm not going for a panda pick. I'm going After Sun easily. Second best film of the year for me.
Okay, I'll go my second best. The best picture winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Wow. Okay, flying off the board.
Then is it me again?
Yep,
It is you again.
Yep.
I'll go Spielberg's Fablemans. And maybe an underrated pick.
Interesting.
I knew it
Good
wasn't
pick.
falling.
Okay. Do I panda or do I go for my third best? I'm gonna panda slightly. I'm gonna take Decision to Leave as my next pick.
Ooh.
Did not think that was your pander pick.
Yeah, I did not think that was your pander pick.
Yeah, I think my other pick might get back to me, but it may not.
I got a couple options. Do I? Ooh, yeah, okay, I'm going to pander. I'm going to go. Oh, no, is that. Maybe I'm doubling back. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Puss in Boots' Last Wish.
It's a big panda pick.
I
That
thought you
is
were taking
massive
something
panda
else.
pick.
I was nervous, but that you didn't take it. Give me Top Gun Maverick all day. That's not a pander.
Yeah.
I genuinely love this movie.
Not fair.
Mm.
Top Gun was definitely ahead on my list, but Puss in
I
Boots
know.
is just the ultimate pander pick. So
And then I'm going to double that up with The Northman.
Nice.
Oh, that's another really good pick. I'm going to take Nope. Jordan Peele's Nope.
Damn it. Then I gotta go Banshees of Inisherin next, easily from what I've got left.
Yep.
Nice. Okay, I'll go the best action movie of the year, Avatar: The Way of Water.
Mid.
Thought it was coming.
Mid.
And then as my second, I'll go RRR.
Oh, kind of an
Nice.
outside shot. Nice. Good pick.
Next, I'm gonna go Tar, definitely. Someone's bound to
That
pick
was
it.
falling.
Yeah. Me next?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go. Okay, since I've pandered with a couple picks, I'm going to go a pick that's kind of personal to me. I'm going to go Cha Cha Real Smooth.
Ooh,
Great
still
film.
haven't seen it.
Good show. Cooper Rafe. Yeah. Emerging
All right,
director.
my next pick. You know what I'm going to take? I'm going to go Philly Represent, Give Me Hustle, starring Adam Sandler. Gotta take
Damn.
the movie.
Was
No one
not
has-
expecting
no one's
that.
seen but
Same
me.
thing.
Not at all.
What'd you say?
Wasn't expecting that.
No, I wasn't either.
Good pick, though. Good pick. Solid movie. Back to me. Or no, Alex, you got two in a row?
Oh, shit, I forgot. All right, next pick, I'm going to double that up. Give me a film it's not a pander, but it's from one of my favorite directors, a film I absolutely love. Give me the best animated movie of the year, which is better than Puss in Boots, Apollo 10.5 from Richard Linklater.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say
Wow.
something
I was not
like
expecting that. It's a great film, though. I really love that film.
Yeah, I gotta watch it. It's been on my watch list forever. Okay, so you guys have basically chalked off all of my top films, but I'm gonna pick one that the Oscars loved that maybe we didn't love as much. All Quiet on the Western Front.
It's a good fifth round.
Yeah, I think that's a steal.
I got two options here, but I'm gonna go for Bones and All. Luca Guadagnino, really, really underrated. Still,
Nice. Best
Another
horror
good
of the
fifth
year.
no.
I can't believe this one hasn't been picked, but I'll go Eggers' second best film, The Northman.
I
Already
already
been
took that.
picked.
No,
Did
it's
you
already
actually?
been picked. Already been picked.
Third
Yeah.
round.
Okay, no wonder. Okay. I'll go. That's a bit. Oh. You've took all the big ones.
Yeah.
There's still a Best
went
Picture
fast,
nominee
man.
on. There's still a
Yeah.
couple Best Picture
There's
nominees
a
on the
couple of
board.
good ones on the board.
Yeah,
I'll,
there's a
Yeah,
couple
there
good
is.
I'll go a director that I love, but the film wasn't as loved as I loved it. I'll go The Whale.
Solid pick.
Literally, Oscar likes my
Bad
picks.
film. Bad film.
Yeah, I think there were some better ones on the board than that, but it might get you some votes.
No,
Well, I
that
thought-
was a pick
honestly,
for me. I don't think that's a panda pick.
Does that round out our draft? Is that everyone?
That rounds it out. So
Perfect.
we have Will with The Batman, Puss in Boots, Nope, Cha Cha Real Smooth, and All Quiet on the Western Front. Oscar with After Sun, Decision to Leave, Banshees of Inisherin, Tar, Bones and All. Ryan with Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fablemans, Avatar 2, RRR, and The Whale. And then, of course, by far, runaway the best team with Babylon, Top Gun Maverick, The Northman, Hustle, and Apollo 10.5. So you guys watching at home can vote in the comments down below or on Twitter or whichever platform works best for you. We count up votes from all different ones, so vote wherever is at your most convenience.
Yeah, dude, just like going through the draft results, 2022 was such a banging year for movies. Like the depth of films. Like at the top, you got the best ones, like the ones that absolutely bang, in my opinion: Batman, Babylon, After Sun, and then there's just so much depth. Like 25 really good movies named.
Yeah, and there's still a couple off the board that no one even that went undrafted. Like Pinocchio went undrafted, Triangle of Sadness, X. There was a lot of Glass Onion. So we could have gone a whole nother round and still been taking decent films.
Bullet
Absolutely.
Train, great film.
I didn't see that one, but I heard.
Haven't seen it.
A couple of international picks as well, like EO and Argentina 1985. I don't know if anybody's seen that.
That either.
I haven't seen it.
The
EO's
Haven't
good.
seen either.
EO's definitely good though.
EO's great.
The Menu as well was pretty solid.
Yeah, shout out on the count of three. That was also a directorial debut. Another good one.
Marcel the Shell didn't go. Also,
That film is so overrated.
Damn.
It has like a 4.2 average. It has a
it's in the top
4.2
250.
average on Letterboxd. That's
that is
ridiculous.
excessive.
Yeah, that is a lot.
It's so boring. I nearly fell asleep watching that film.
I haven't seen it yet.
Also, Broker went undrafted. I don't know if anyone saw that.
That's a really good film.
Great
That's
film.
I haven't
really
seen
good. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Two best picture
Song Kang
nominations
Ho's.
as well. Triangle of Sadness and
Yeah,
Women Talking.
Woman Talking.
But yeah, let's just get right into it as a year as a whole. So in this episode, we're going to be just discussing at first the year and different things that we think define 2022 as a year for film, and from the Oscars to the blockbusters to the release schedule. And then we're going to be doing our full top 10 rankings of the year. We're going to do 10 to 6 rather quickly, and then we'll go a little more in depth with our 1 to 5. So let's get right into it. I think one thing that made this a very unique film year is when we look at most of the modern film years of the last 10 years, the release schedules pretty much looked like summer, we get all the blockbusters. That's where you get your Marvel movies, your DC movies, and other movies that generally fall in that top 10 highest grossing movies of the year list, along with, a lot of kids movies and more family-oriented stuff. Then in the fall, we typically get all of our awards movies, the more director movies, and the artistic movies, and things that'll be nominated for awards most likely, typically all come in the fall. And normally the spring up until May is a very weak time for new release movies. Typically we don't get a lot in those because it'll kind of fall out of memory for awards voters. You don't have a bunch of kids who are home from school to maximize profits for families. But I think 2022 is such an insanely unique film year because, like I said, like we just mentioned, even in our top few rounds, a lot of these movies came in the first portion of the year. The Batman, even Top Gun Maverick, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like a lot of these movies, The Northman, a lot of these really great movies from 2022 were actually released in the first half or the first portion of the year, which I think was such a rare year. And then even more rare is that I think the summer ended up being probably one of the weakest summers I think in recent years. I think it was a terrible year for blockbusters for the most part. And we'll get into some more specifics about that later, but it was a very weak summer year, and this is where I kind of started to say, this is, even though I love the beginning portion, it was, at least for me personally, I thought a very weak film year. And even as we got into awards season, it really was very slow. And then it was really like those last couple months of like second half of November through December when we got a lot of those other films that fell that were high draft picks in our draft, where we got the Babylons and the Fablemans and a lot of those more really great award movies. So I think just the release lineup of this year was so insanely unique for just the way modern films are typically released. So, Oscar, do you have any opinions on that? Just the year as a whole, or any of the releases?
Yeah, I think it was just a really, really kind of needed and comeback year, to be honest. We saw a lot of big returns. Obviously, people returning to cinemas. 2021 was kind of a slower start. 2020 really rough. People were kind of flowing back into cinemas more. Obviously, we had three films that made over $1 billion last year. We had Jurassic World Dominion, Top Gun, and Avatar: The Way of the Water. Only one of those was really good, to be honest. But it was just so good to see that back again. I can't remember how many billion-dollar films there are in 2021. I'd be surprised if there was any, maybe one. But it was really nice to see people just coming back to the cinema.
I think 2022 was definitely a bounce back year in terms of COVID. We definitely saw a little bit of a recession, you could put it, in terms of movies. The theaters definitely took a hit, but 2022 definitely served as a bounce back year. And I think I can kind of echo all your opinions and how strong of a year it was, coming off the back of kind of pretty bad years in film. Not to say they were bad, but maybe not as upper echelon as we're used to seeing, like in 2020 and 2021. But 2022 definitely stacks up among the best years in film, just like of all time, honestly, when you're talking about the great years, 2019, 1994, just to name a few. But I just want to talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once and the legs that it had, because Alex mentioned the release schedule for some of these films. They were kind of off kilter, not necessarily in alignment with the Oscars like we've seen in a number of years. But Everything All at Once was released in January, and it was still able to clean up at the Oscars. So I think like the landscape of film and how we digest it as a whole is kind of changing with streaming and all that. So I think, yeah, 2022 was kind of an experimental year in that sense as well. But yeah, great bounce back year. And I don't know if Ryan had any other thoughts on 2022 as a year for movies.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you've said. Like, it was a really strange year. Like, by April, May, we already had the Best Picture winner. Like, how crazy is that? Like, and we already had the Best Comic Book Movie of the year, and like Eggers returning with his big blockbuster, The Northman, and even one of the biggest like horrors of the year in X. That was by May as well. But yeah, 2022 was one of my favorite personal years in cinema. We got like a big variety of blockbusters like Avatar, the Batman, lots of independent cinema that shined, like After Sun and Everything Everywhere All at Once. I know that is an independent. People don't probably people don't think about it like that anymore because of how successful it was, but it was independent. And not only Hollywood either, we had a lot of international pictures that done really well, like RRR, Decision to Leave, EO, The Quiet Girl, a lot of big hitters that reached like the mainstream audiences, I think. And like Alex was saying, yeah, usually Oscars, because of Oscars, everything releases towards the end of the year, because they don't have a good chance if they don't get remembered. But Everything Everywhere All at Once really was like a standout, like coming out in March and managing to like maintain the hype, like all year round, and it really is a testament to how good it was this year. And yeah, like Alex said, it was a a very little of note in the summer with like Jurassic World. I think Nope was a big highlight of that. It did get delayed in the UK, so it wasn't really summer. But there really wasn't much else that came out. And of course, the standout being Top Gun, which kind of reignited everyone's hope that blockbusters can make money again.
Yeah, and I noticed, Ryan was talking about, the kind of financial reviving of the theaters, and I actually kind of disagree with what Will said about 2021 as a film year. I think, obviously, I think everyone who's into film could agree 2019 was a historically amazing film year. We could cover in its own video, and then 2020, obviously, probably the worst year in the history of film for obvious reasons. But I think 2021 was actually another very deep, strong film year, at least personally. I think there were a lot of really great films that came out. However, pretty much every great film that came out that year lost money. And I think there's a lot of great films from that year that a lot of people probably haven't seen. And I think this year, in 2022, we definitely saw a revival of kind of movie theaters. And obviously, there was that concern of, are movie theaters going to go away? Is streaming going to take over? And I think 2022 as a year really put all of those concerns to rest. I think we saw a true revival of the theatrical experience. But I think there's still much concern over kind of the award movie and the more director driven movies that are kind of driven by a unique artist behind them. I think pretty much all these, like, we saw significant budgets given to Babylon and, Guillermo del Toro in Nightmare Alley the year before, and Robert Eggers with The Northman. And even The Fablemans, even though Spielberg will always be able to get funding. But, all of these films really did lose money. And I think we definitely have to talk about, the concern with that, because even though it's great to see films like Babylon and Northman get made, when the studios see them losing money, there has to be concern of, are these films going to be made in, 2024 and 25 and 26 and years to come. So I definitely, as much as it's great to see the Top Gun Mavericks and the Avatars kind of revive the movie theater experience and get people back to the theater, I do think that there needs to be something, the more A24s, and obviously Everything Ever All at Once was a huge win because that movie made tons of money, as we know, and won tons of awards, which is great for that type of, more independent cinema. But I think the studios kind of need to figure out ways to get people back to the theater for, the Babylons and the Northmans and those kinds of movies. So, Ryan, did you have any opinion on, just the financial losses to some of the films that went very high in our draft?
Yeah, it was very concerning with like a very mixed perception of like films in the year. Whilst there was some like highly like anticipated releases that made a good amounts of money, like it was concerning to see huge budget films struggle to make money at all, and especially Babylon. That was painful to see that bomb as bad as it did. And that's more probably the biggest. Was it the biggest bomb of the year? I don't remember, but
Might have been.
Yeah, it might have been.
But yeah, it was probably the best of the decade, and it done that bad. But yeah, in general, there was just a lot of big films with stat casts that you'd think would be a safe bet. Like Amsterdam had like Margot Robbie, and several other like big cast members, and that also made like 10 million. I think that bombed exactly like Babylon. Although that wasn't a very good film either, but still, you think it would be safe for that stat cast.
Yeah, I think you guys kind of summed it up pretty well. But I think like in terms of like Babylon and some of the other movies that kind of tanked, I think what we're also kind of seeing is a transition from the actors and actresses being the main pull and focal point of the films, and directors, IPs, franchises kind of being the main pull of the films. And it's really weird to see these stacked casts, like you said, Nightmare Alley and Amsterdam, who have all the name value in terms of who's acting in the film, but they just like fail critically, fail at the box office. So I think it's kind of transitioned away from the stars and who's starring in these films and kind of move towards the directors and the IPs. And you kind of see that a lot of the films that are coming out nowadays are 2 or 3 in the title, right? They know it works and they continue to do it. So yeah, it's always going to be prevalent in film, but we got to keep supporting these low budget niche indie movies, I guess you could say. And yeah, that's all I got for that. Babylon's a damn good movie too, and I can't believe it bombed. It is a shock it didn't make any money. But yeah, Oscar, did you have any remarks regarding the financial situation?
Yeah, a bit. I think kind of general audiences now, I think it's becoming a lot less that people are less liking long films. People just see the 3 hour runtime and they're like, nah, I don't have anything to do with that. And with Babylon, for example, Rotten Tomatoes is like has a big effect on general audiences. People just see that bad score by the audience and critic for this. Unfortunately, that's a big turn off for them as well. It's even surprising to see a Spielberg film that bombed as well. People don't talk about that as much as Babylon, which I find quite weird because that didn't do very well at all. Kind of similar to Tar as well. I'm not sure how that did. I'm assuming it didn't do very well because again, that's a long, really dialogue-driven film that people just don't want to have to sit through and just don't have any interest for anymore.
Yeah, Tar made 30 million off a 7 million budget, so
How much was the budget?
7 million. So
Oh wow.
So actually,
So-
I thought that
In
was
Hollywood nowadays, you're looking to make a million, right? Like all these multi-million pictures, you spend millions to make millions, and that like 1990 mid-budget 40 $50 million movie is just gone, right? Like we don't really see those because they're not that profitable, and I think those are the movies that people generally love. And it's just a shame to see that studios kind of gravitate away from that because they don't pump out as much money as some of these other movies.
Yeah, I think, and another thing that I think is a big factor in it is they don't seem to really be investing in the marketing for a lot of these kind of mid-budget films, like the Babylons and the Fablemans. These movies, like I brought up Babylon to so many people, and they hadn't even heard that the movie existed. So I think the studios are, you're investing almost 100 million into Babylon, and you're not then investing the money after that to get it into the right eyeballs and really get it in front of people so that they want to go see this movie. I think obviously Barbie is a little more corporate than a Babylon, but like Barbie, the way they kind of innovated their marketing strategy with everyone wearing pink and kind of creating an event out of this, I think like Smile is actually a great example from last year in terms of just kind of using creative marketing to get eyeballs, people talking about the film and really get people in the theater. So I think that the A24s and Searchlight Pictures and Focus Features and these kind of studios that are making the films that I think we all really appreciate, I think they're going to need to find ways to get a better bang for their buck with their marketing and kind of innovate in years to come. But I think it's a good time to pivot into a little more positive conversation. Will talked about the kind of death of the movie star era, which is certainly a big concern because back in the 90s, for example, you could attach a Leonardo DiCaprio to your movie, and he would get the movie. He would make it a profitable movie. If he decided to do an original project, people would still go see the movie because of the star attached to it if they like the star. But the stars can no longer really drive the audience and ticket sales anymore. Now it really is all coming from IPs, which is why it's getting kind of repetitive, the types of films that we're seeing in the mainstream, with everything being a franchise movie and a remake, spin-off, or sequel. But I think there really is one true movie star left who can really get those box office numbers in, and that is Mr. Tom Cruise, who is really doing so much to keep cinema and so many elements of the art form alive. By even though Top Gun is a familiar IP and it's a legacy sequel, I think most of the people who went to see that movie were not seeing it because of they're necessarily Top Gun fans. Like Top Gun was one of my favorite movies growing up. I love the movie. But I think a lot of the percentage of those $1 billion that it made were not from people who are necessarily fans of the franchise. It's the new heights he's taking practical effects and the new sort of film experience that he's creating for his audience with his film that was unlike anything I think any of us had ever experienced before. Like we've never seen aerial photography on this level, and I think what he pulled off is just absolutely incredible. So Ryan, what do you think about Tom Cruise kind of doing what he can to get people back into the movie theaters and just kind of the way he revived it?
yeah, Tom Cruise like star power really is unique in like this day. And I think one of the main things about his appeal is like his dedication to practical effects, which like really helped or generate the excitement for going to see Top Gun. I mean, this man literally learned how to fly a jet, got everybody else to also learn, and then he stuck an IMAX camera in it. Like that's mental. Um, and there's not many people like left in the business that would even go to these lengths or like even have the ability to do it. And but Top Gun especially, this went through like so many delays. Like it was supposed to come out like right before the pandemic started. Because I remember seeing the trailers for this and I hated it so much. Like I thought the trailers looked awful. I wasn't a fan of the first Top Gun initially, and I just couldn't wait for it to come out so I could stop seeing the trailer. But yeah, the fact that the theatrical release was pushed so far back shows like how well Tom Cruise like knew like what the audiences want, and like he knows that they need to see and experience this movie the right way, like with a big grand IMAX screen, and it worked because it was like one of those cases of a film which is like word to mouth, and I think it made 1.5 billion, which is crazy. Yeah, it just shows like how worthwhile it is financially for them to like actually make like well-made movies and just trust like their creators to do it properly. And I think people will show up if it is a movie worth doing. So, and yeah, of course, not all studios will listen to this, and of course, we've seen a lot of great films from this year or last year that got completely ignored anyway. But yeah, nevertheless, it is great to see. The nostalgia fact probably played a small part in it because people, I think everybody knows what Top Gun is. So it definitely helped in drawing our audiences in for the sequel. But yeah, it is, so it wasn't really proof that you can see large profits from original screenplays quite yet, but it was promising. So, Will, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it was kind of the blend of everything you said, right? Like Tom Cruise is the bit of the name value, combine that with the practical effects, with the IP of Mission Impossible, you get a massive blockbuster success. And I completely agree. Mr. Movies is doing the absolute most, and I commend everything he does. But I wanted to bring up one thing. You mentioned that Tom Cruise does all these practical stunts. He does all his own effects, or all the practical effects, does all of his own stunts. We saw that with Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer, which saw a similar success in terms of box office turnout and critical acclamation. Do you think people are kind of rejecting CGI and more grandiose computer-generated images in favor of more real, lifelike, relatable filmmaking? Just a question to pose to anyone. I know that's a little on a tangent, but I thought that was a little interesting considering Tom Cruise's success and Christopher Nolan's.
Yeah, so I could certainly say I hope so, and I hope that everything you're saying is true, and that there is that desire for it. I think there's obviously concern of, are they going to see it because of the names attached? Obviously, Nolan's name holds a lot of weight, and Tom Cruise's name holds a lot of weight. So, are people going because they're hearing Christopher Nolan and Tom Cruise doing practical effects, or are they just going because they're a fan of the prior work of these artists? But I certainly hope that people are kind of getting fed up with CGI, because I personally think practical effects are always way more effective, and I think we're really haven't even scratched the surface of what they can be. I think we saw in like the 90s them really reaching new heights, and then the CGI boom kind of came in, and it was new, it was fresh, it was something, we hadn't seen before at that time. But I think now there's a lot more to be innovated with practical effects, and I like to see people like Nolan and Tom Cruise, pushing the boundaries of what those crafts can do. But Ryan, what do you think about all of this?
Yeah, like you said, I do hope that people are looking for practical effects. People may not care about it. They might just it might just something that they don't actually think about. But I think definitely stuff like if you hear that Tom Cruise has got in an actual jet and filmed it, that is an appeal to go to the movie. Or Christopher Nolan has filmed an atom bomb go off without CGI. That is definitely the big headlines that make people go and see these movies. But yeah, I don't know if people put that much thought into it, but I hope they do, because practical effects is definitely the way to go.
Oscar, did you have any thoughts on that, or can we get off this tangent?
No, I don't have much to add. Just kind of about Tom Cruise this year. You see, even from last year, he's just been pushing Mission Impossible into. He wanted just to get it into IMAX, and he was pushing and pushing and pushing constantly. Unfortunately, that didn't happen for him because of a really weird release schedule for Mission Impossible, which means it's gonna lose quite a bit of money, which I think was the wrong move. But even him in the first place, just pushing for that IMAX, just pushing, he wants it, and he just loves cinema so much. That's kind of the rare thing nowadays. He's there for the fun, for the movies. He wants to create a great movie. That's why it's so good.
All right, I think I can now. Sorry, Alex, did you want to circle us back to Oscar talk?
No, I was going to move forward, so.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, we can move forward.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I think it's he certainly is someone who loves cinema, and it's great to see someone with kind of the influence that he has, who's still, pushing for movie theaters, pushing for practical effects, and really preserving, and not just preserving, but advancing certain older techniques of the art form. So that's great to see. But, we've been talking about Tom Cruise kind of saving cinema, but I think there's another, I guess, element that really started pushing to help kind of save cinema in 2022 that I don't see a lot of conversation about. And that's the emergence of Letterboxd, which, if you're watching this podcast, you're probably familiar with. It's a kind of social film app where, I mean, I don't need to explain it. You can rate the movies, you can see what your friends rated, all of that. But I think Letterboxd, there's not a lot of conversation about how it's really changing the way that people are, one, perceiving movies, and two, the way that, movies will be made. Maybe not yet, but in years to come, I think it'll certainly have a big influence. We talked about films like Babylon and After Sun losing money, but I think studios, at least if they're smart, which will, because I mean, to be honest, with the strike, and I don't know if we call people like Bob Iger smart, but I would say that if there are smart people at least working at these studios, they should 100% be monitoring Letterboxd, because I think there's a certain amount of value from, a film that, one, is highly rated on Letterboxd, but also is getting a lot of views and a lot of, views and, conversation about the film through apps like Letterboxd, where you can the studios can see how much conversation the film's generating and the real popularity and impact of it. And I think it's also worth noting that although the movie star era has kind of seen its day, Letterboxd, the first name you see at the top when you click on a movie is the director. And I think now it's really promoting a lot of awareness to different filmmakers, to where now it's, lists are a very big part of the app, and people are watching films for the sake of making a list and doing rankings, which is definitely affecting the way we're perceiving the films. But also, that, for example, now because of Letterboxd, people are more likely to go through a Quentin Tarantino or a Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography so that they can rank it and then see where their friends ranked it. Obviously, there's going to be concerns about, once Letterboxd gets kind of taken over by bot accounts, which could affect the rating system. And, there is an element of social pressure for some people behind, the way they rate movies, and also concerns just overthinking movies from the perspective of five, I guess really a 10-star score is what it is, rather than the actual, thoughts and commentary on it, because more people are just kind of rating them than actually leaving reviews and thoughts on them. But I think it's definitely helping, promote a lot of certain movies, and definitely giving studios another incentive to produce a Babylon or an After Sun and movies like those where they can socially generate conversation, which is a big part of pretty much all businesses for years to come. So, Will, did you have any thoughts on Letterboxd as, the way it's changing the landscape of film?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been watching movies now. I'm 23 years old. I've been watching movies all my life, basically. And I started out with a spreadsheet on my dad's computer, logging the movies. I had the Notes app in my phone. I graduated to the IMDb account. I frequented Rotten Tomatoes. I've been through all the phases, right? And I can safely say I'm in my Letterboxd era now. But out of all the movie apps, logging, social aspects, Letterboxd definitely takes the cake. There's just a nice balance of foreign films, international films, old films, new films. They just kind of there's a perspective for everyone, which I really appreciate from the Letterboxd ranking perspective, which, sometimes IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes can get pretty Western world centric, or even Christopher Nolan centric in the case of IMDb. But yeah, I think what Alex is saying about Letterboxd bringing light to a lot of different movies is totally great. And seeing it just evolve just over the couple years, like I've had it for 3 years now. And I remember when I got the app, it was kind of niche, and it's now kind of cool to see it like be a prevalent app in people's rotation. And I think it will continue to grow and will continue to have a positive effect on films. But yeah, Ryan, I don't know if you had any comments on Letterboxd.
Yeah, like you were saying, how niche it was, like just in 2021. I just started using it like around then, and there was like maybe two, maybe three films with a million like logs on it. I think it was like Inception and Parasite maybe, but now like stuff like Barbie, it will come out and like 4 weeks later it's got a million plus. Like it's crazy how much like the user base has changed. But yeah, I don't know if we're fully transitioned over yet. I think a lot of people still will use an IMDb or a Rotten Tomatoes to like judge whether they're going to go and see movies or not. For people that aren't really properly into film. But yeah, have you got anything to add to that, Oscar?
Yeah, I think this by far, and I'm sure most of us will agree, the best of kind of the movie website. Yeah, I think it encompasses the best average score. It's got the best top 250. Like Will said, it's just more international cinema. It's got kind of more representation for kind of wider areas of film, and I think that's what is definitely missing from the other ones. Like Ryan was just saying, like Barbie, Oppenheimer, Across the Spider-Verse, the three fastest films to reach a million logs on Letterboxd, all films from this year, and the base is just growing and growing and growing. He's even appearing in jokes in the films like Scream 6. That was like such a nice surprise to see in that film, but that made me laugh a lot. Still the best joke of the year, I think. But yeah, it's just so nice to see the growth. I've been on it since December 2021. I think I kind of take it seriously, to be honest, then. But I've just grown it and grown it and grown it. And to be honest, that's what's kind of logging films on there is what's just been driving me more just to watch more and more films, because it's kind of the joy you get of logging and rating films on there, for me anyway.
Yeah, and I think another, great thing about Letterboxd is the people who made it really did design a very clean app with, all the different filters and different features on it. It's very easy to use. So I think the designers made it as a very user friendly, which is a great achievement by them. Yeah, like I said, I think Letterboxd could be a very good tool in helping to get a greater variety of films made and seen and appreciated over the next couple years. But let's get into probably a little controversial from us because we obviously have a lot of opinions that we weren't fond of on, and that is the Academy Awards for year 2022. And, I think people talk about, some people say, the Oscars is irrelevant, or, who really cares what the Oscars has to say. But I don't agree with this. I think the Oscars is very important. And the reason I say that is because a film like Babylon loses money, let's say. But when you have a bunch of award nominations and award wins, what that adds is it adds prestige to the studio. It adds credibility to from the audience to see, Paramount made Babylon. So if Paramount wins, 8 Oscars for Babylon, that makes them seem like a more prestigious studio, and it makes the audience more likely to see what they're going to produce in years to come. That's why I do think, you need to have conversations about the nominations and the robberies of it, because it's important for getting the films that lose money. If you can still win awards and get nominations, it will help get those films made in the future, even if there's not that same financial incentive. Which is why A24 takes the risks that they do. Like, I don't think they made Everywhere Everything All at Once thinking that it was going to make $100 million, but I think they saw it as a film that could maybe pick up some awards and make a cultural impact of some kind. So I think when we saw, obviously, we all have our own list of robberies. Babylon absolutely robbed in so many ways. Best original score, Babylon is maybe the biggest Oscar robbery I've ever seen in my life, to lose to a 3 note dubstep beat. But it was literally, there were so many different layers and styles, and like, there's so much to this score. It's one of the best film scores I've ever seen. How that lost to, I'm not even, it's a whole tangent we can do a whole episode on.
Whoa! And enough! All Quiet on the Western Front slander. That score was banging, and it was used
It's
way more
true,
subtly.
though.
It's
really
just because
that
the
one.
Oscars used it. The da da da. It's literally just because they had it on repeat. But I digress. Yes, Babylon absolutely robbed.
Exactly. After Sun, Rob, Decision to Leave, not even a Best Foreign. I thought that should have been a Best Picture nomination. Didn't even get Best Foreign Film nomination, which just I have no explanation for.
That's ridiculous.
Yup, the Batman, the Northman. So yeah, Ryan, what do you think about the landscape of the Oscars in 2022?
Yeah,
Really
I am someone that does like following the Oscars. Like, people might not think it matters or anything, but I do enjoy like the predictions and following it throughout the year. But yeah, I was mostly happy with it this year. A lot of the categories, all the movies and stuff I wanted, I did mostly get my way. But of course, there was a big snubs like the score, for a lot of the year, The Fabelmans was kind of looked at as like an early frontrunner for Best Picture. It was a very well crafted Spielberg movie, which we'd think the Academy would love, but it ended up just getting a few nominations and didn't really have a chance of winning at all by the time Oscars came around. I'd like to talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once. Obviously, a big sweep. Ended up getting 7 Oscars from its 11 nominations, which very big achievement. Yeah, there isn't very many films that have actually even done that sort of pull from the Oscars. There's only 2 films that have won 3 acting awards at the Oscars, being A Streetcar Named Desire and Network. So it's been 46 years since anyone's even matched what Everything Everywhere All at Once done. Of course, they won Best Director, Best Supporting Actor. Ke Kwan, of course, that's probably one of the easiest to predict that night. He was a lock for months. It was fully deserved. Who didn't love him winning the award, because it was him coming back. He was in many films from our childhood, especially. Best Actress, Michelle Yeoh, that was very well deserved. Easily one of the best performances from that year. Although Kate Blanchett was also very good. People probably think that was a snub, but I did want Michelle Yeoh to win. There's also a big controversy, a big snub. People think the Best Supporting Actress, Jamie Lee Curtis. She clearly rode the hype train from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Very early on in the awards season, like, she was very vocal about how she wanted just a nomination. Like, just that would be like a crazy achievement. But yeah, once she won at the SAG Awards, I think it was quite clear that she probably was going to carry the train and get that Oscar, and she did. I probably would have picked Stephanie Hsu or Kerry Condon to win, but at the same time, I do love Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, I think she is a legend. So it was kind of nice to see her win it, but people probably didn't like that. And of course, they won the screenplay. It was a very well written screenplay. It was a very complicated movie, and I think it was a really tight screenplay that they managed to get. So I think that was deserved. And then editing, of course. If you watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's very obvious why that won editing. And then, yeah, the best score of Robbery, that was crazy. I've still got that on repeat. I think he's one of my top Spotify artists for the year. So all I've been listening to is that. And yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about the All Quiet on the Western Front score since. So I think the real winner was Babylon. But yeah, Oscar, what's your thoughts on the Oscars?
Yeah, there was definitely. This is my first time watching the Oscars live this year. I'd kind of been loosely following it beforehand, but this is a real experience. For me, for us over in the UK, this is like starts at midnight, ends at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I had to do a lot of silent raging that night, trying not to shouting, really, really disappointed. But yeah, like you were mentioning earlier, kind of a lot of the earlier releases in that year doing really, really well. The Northman was not one of those. That I think that really, really suffered from being an early release. It got absolutely nothing. Should have had cinematography easily. I have no idea how. Costumes it should have had easily. Set production design I think it should have got as well. None of that. After Sun, very happy to see Paul Mescal in there. He should have won Best Actor in my opinion, but he didn't. Charlotte Wells robbed of Best Director nomination. Really, really disappointed to see that, and obviously robbed of a Best Picture nomination because it should have been right up there. Babylon we've all been over, so I'm not gonna go in too deep into that. But Decision to Leave should have been nominated for so many things. I think that's best cinematography of the year for Decision to Leave, in my opinion. I think I should have actually won. Tang Wei should have been best supporting actress or best actress. Best supporting actress, I think, for her. She was absolutely incredible. Park Chan-wook should have been a slam dunk best director nomination as well. Got absolutely nothing. Elvis going into this is a really, really weird one. It way overachieved, in my opinion, in its nominations. I was very happy to see that it got absolutely nothing because I think it's just it's a decent biopic, in my opinion. Austin Butler, I'm very happy to see Brendan Fraser take that over him, to be honest. Not I have anything against Austin Butler. I didn't like The Whale, but he was the carrying force of that film easily. Nope, also a massive loss as well. Kind of the entirety of my actually I won't say that. I was about to spoil my top 10 thing then. But nope, another one that suffered. Should have picked up cinematography as well and sound design. I don't know how I didn't pick up a sound design nomination, because I think that's the best sound design of the year. That really, really carried that film along for me. They're just really, really haunting. And like Ryan said earlier about the Everything Everywhere All at Once screenplay, I still think that should have been Banshees. I still think that was the better and tighter screenplay of the year, and it definitely had the biggest effect on me. Will, you got anything to say?
Yeah, those are all great comments. I basically echo everything y'all are saying about Babylon, After Sun. Totally agree. But I think maybe the biggest snub for me, which doesn't seem to be for you guys, was Best Leading Actor. Paul Mescal not winning this award or not even being a top dog in the race was absolutely shocking to me. Like, don't get me wrong, you did say Brendan Fraser puts the whale on his back. Like, he is the powerhouse of that performance. But he gives a very, like, emotional power performance in a different way. Paul Mescal delivers a performance we've never really seen before, an emotional performance that doesn't need the yelling and screaming, So I thought that was a little bit underwhelming that he didn't win that, but still very impressed with his nomination and very proud of him for that. Yeah, again, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't think the Daniels made this movie with the intention of it winning any Oscars at all, really. I think this is a film that completely transcends the whole award show experience. Like, all the award shows or all the films that win awards are generally the same, right? These long takes, scenic, cinematography, attention to sound. But Everything all everywhere all at once is a complete juxtaposition of that. It's complete chaos, it's all over the place. So I think that winning the amount of Oscars that it did was so surprising, deserved, but very surprising. And I think kind of serves as a turning point maybe for what the Academy is looking for in a Best Picture. I don't know. But yeah, definitely a great performance from Everything Everywhere. Love to see it. And then, yeah, Batman not getting any love. Again, that is painful considering the quality of film that Batman was. You could have put, any leading actor in the leading role without the bat suit, and it could have served as a detective noir perfectly alone. Would have been a 5-star, 5 out of 5 film. Like, the Batman just served so perfectly alone. It didn't need anything else. So it getting no love was a bit shocking. But that was kind of all. The Oscars was better than most years, I'd say, but it did definitely miss on a few. But I think we can swiftly transition into our top 10s of the year. We're going to quickly go through our top 10. Alex, did you have something to say? You wanted to...
Hold on. There's a couple robberies I do need to mention, because you mentioned...
Yeah, get them off your chest, man.
And the fact that the Batman didn't get nominated for Best Score either, not even a nomination, was criminal.
Disgusting.
What can I say about that? See the score nominations. There's a nominations list before that's like 30 long. It didn't even get onto that list, so they couldn't even.
Yeah, I did see that. That was a disgrace.
Yeah.
Like,
that is a disgrace. Or costume, like there was it could have been nominated for a ton of awards.
It won cinematography.
Yeah,
like,
could have won cinematography.
Yeah. Films were The Northman and The Batman, and neither got a nomination.
I know,
which is
shocking.
Crazy. And I think obviously we thought that Black Panther kind of opened the doors for superhero movies to receive some attention from the award show. So it was very kind of disappointing. At least with The Dark Knight, it was more expected. Whereas the Batman, I thought kind of that barrier had been broken, and it's time to shine in the awards perspective. So that was disappointing. And Best Score, they just totally screwed it up. I often defend people who criticize the Oscars. I defend that they're very good at picking nominations and just not always as good at picking winners. But this year, I think they did a terrible job with the nominations. I think that only maybe half of the Best Picture nominees I would have chosen. I think that, you have films like The Batman should have been nominated there. After Sun, absolutely. The Northman deserved to be in the conversation. So did Decision to Leave. So I don't think they did really knocked it out of the park with the nominations. I think if I had to choose Best Director for $1 million, the nominations, I don't think I could limit it to 5 because there were that many incredibly directed films this year, and they still got it wrong. Like, there's still, like, I'm not going to, call out any directors who I don't think should have been nominated, but the fact that I think, Matt Reeves knocked it out of the park with his direction.
Charlotte Wells, dude.
Charlotte Wells, honestly, I think you can make an argument she should win. For me,
she should have won it. Yeah, like
I agree.
And I'll mention that a little more, about, give her a little more praise later. Like you said, I think Paul Mescal gives a very reserved performance that's so effective without saying anything, just with his body language. So the fact that I'm glad he got nominated, but the fact that he didn't even get more attention, I think, was another screw up on their part. And Park Chan Wook for Decision to Leave. Like, he didn't get nominated for Best Director. Like, I know he didn't get a foreign film nomination, but he should have been in that conversation. And like cinematography, Best Director, some of the screenplay awards. I agree with Oscar, even though I wasn't the biggest Banshees fan. I do think, from just a purely screenplay perspective, that did deserve to win over Everything Everywhere. And even though I think Everywhere is a great film, I think it's funny, the two awards I think it deserved most were Best Editing and Best Sound. And Best Sound is one of the few awards it didn't win. But I think the sound design of that film is such a incredible, such a strong part of what makes it so effective. And I think I wouldn't have picked it to win necessarily all of the awards. Some of them I would have, but it's not a film that I'm like angry to see it win. I think it's a great film. I think it was a outburst of creativity and new style and innovation. So I think it's definitely a win for cinema as a whole that it picked up that many awards. But the nominations, you fucked up, Oscars. You fucked it up. But let's get into our top.
I've got
10.
one more to get off my chest, actually. Speaking of international snubs, we have RRR, obviously, because of the way that category works. The country has to nominate which film they want to put forward, and India, for some reason, just didn't pick this to go forward. I don't even know what the film was.
They picked a different film, though, right? They nominated a different film,
yeah,
they did,
because they thought it had a chance for some reason. But yeah, I think RRR would have gotten the best picture. There really was that much hype around it, and of course there was the Nato Nato song. That was like the saving grace of it. I think that was one of the highlights of like the whole Oscar night. Like, everybody wanted that to win. But yeah, that was a travesty because I think it really could have won a couple of awards. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And Sarah Polley, Canadian. Sarah Polley winning Best Adapted Screenplay, Canadian. Shout out Sarah Polley. Just had to say it. Okay, we can now move on.
Let's get into, so like I said, we're going to get into our top 10s of the year. We're going to kind of breeze through 10 to 6, and then we're going to go a little more in depth with our top 5s. All right, so I know this is a top 10, but quickly, there's 2 honorable mentions I just can't not mention because they deserve to be in my top 10, but just aren't because of crowded reasons. The first is Broker, a film directed by a Japanese director working in South Korea, Hirokazu Koreeda. I apologize if I mispronounced that name, but this film didn't have the visual flair that the other Korean film, Decision to Leave, did, but it really just did such a great job of creating like a strong surrogate family that you really care so much about in the film. It's full of emotion, and there's a deadline to the film where kind of things are going to change, and you're just dreading that because you love spending time with these characters and seeing them together so much. That's a film that I highly recommend. Another honorable mention to Tar, which I think is a brilliant film. It's obviously slow. It's not for everyone. It's a film you really have to kind of turn your brain on and pay attention to, but I think it's very reflective in a lot of ways of a lot of things going on in the modern world where, we have that really incredible long dialogue take, which is, it's probably like a 3-4 minute scene. I don't know the exact number. And then to see that be cut up later in the film, I think is just a really interesting commentary, and kind of just the pacing of the editing, how we spend so long waiting to get to the climax of the film, and then once we get to that climax, it kind of just moves so quickly then, and the entire pace of the editing, the way that evolves, was very subtly brilliant by director Todd Field. But now we'll get into my top 10, and starting us off at number 10, I'm going to give a shout out to the best city in the world, Philadelphia, with Hustle, starring Adam Sandler. If me at 10 years old were to be told that there would be a film about the Sixers filmed in Philly with Adam Sandler, I would have lost my mind. He was one of my favorite actors growing up, and to see him come here and do a film about my favorite team in my city, it's just an incredible experience. I thought they really did a good job of kind of capturing the great things about this city, and they had a hometown director, Jeremiah Cigar. I want to give a shout out to him, kind of just creating that vision behind the camera, really putting on for the city. So seeing that was an incredible experience for me. When I saw this in theaters, which I know a lot of people didn't get to experience because it's a Netflix film, it was like I was watching a basketball game. Like when they scored, the audience was clapping. So definitely one of my most memorable theater experiences. Number 9, Get your fingers ready to hate in the comments. Like, get your keyboards ready. Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I loved the franchise as a kid. I played all the video games. I watched all the cartoons. And when I saw this movie, I felt like I was 8 years old again. It was so much fun. I don't give a fuck. Hate if you want to hate. I don't care.
That
This
might be my
movie is
bottom 10.
loved it.
Yeah, same.
Think about the movies you left off. Think about the movies you left off to make
I don't
room
give a
for
fuck.
that
I'll
movie.
pick Sonic 2 over all those movies any day of the week. I don't care. Okay, that is my
Oh,
number
dear.
9. Hate if you want. I don't give a fuck. All right, moving on. Number 8, we're going to go with a sleeper pick, Apollo 10.5, which is really not. It's Richard Linklater, one of my all-time favorite directors and writers, has had so much influence on me. And he's always playing around with the different ways you can tell a story and kind of the structure of a story. He really creates this a kind of more of like a time capsule than anything else of, the moment by moment thought of, we know these historical events, and he kind of guides you through the moment by moment thought as they're progressing. And it doesn't feel like someone reflecting on the past as much as someone living in the past kind of projecting of what the future might be. And I think it's just such an interesting perspective to see a period piece done in that way. His animation's incredible, always brings so much creativity to everything he does. And I think this is truly actually subtly one of his best, even though it really doesn't get talked about in the top tier of his work. Number 7, I have The Northman. Robert Eggers, a brilliant direction just on such an epic scale. There's just so many layers and things to break down about this film, but his cinematography, not just in crafting every image like a painting, but crafting, 5 different images like a painting that are in the same shot and you don't even notice, because he'll show you one incredible shot and then he'll move the camera and kind of hold there and reframe, and you don't even realize that it's the same shot. But really, like, 5 of these masterfully crafted images are all in one long take. It's just an incredibly difficult thing to pull off, and he did such a seamless job of it. So again, robbed at the awards, but an incredible accomplishment from Robert Eggers. And then number 6, a film that honestly on rewatches could maybe even creep into the 5 spot for me, and that's Decision to Leave by Park Chan-wook. Just the direction of this film is so masterful, an absolute gut punch of an ending. And it's just like a wow is the real word to describe this movie. There's just so many layers to it, and it's just constantly kind of flipping the dynamics and flipping your view on everything you're watching. I really can't even just say anything more without going on a huge tangent. It's an incredible film that I encourage everyone to give a chance to. So that's my 10-6.
Cool. I'll go next then. So, for me at 10, actually no, I'll give two honorable mentions first, like Alex did. So for me, first honorable mention has to go to Triangle of Sadness. Sorry. Obviously, really happy to see it pick up a Best Picture nomination. The first 2 acts of this film was probably the funniest film of the year. I was dying. My whole cinema was dying. It was absolutely hilarious. Obviously, the overuse of the vomiting and the sick, definitely not for everybody, but I just found it all hilarious. There's a massive shift in the last act that I know a lot of people didn't love, but I actually really, really liked it. So that deserves an honorable mention. And then next honorable mention for me, definitely The Northman. Just I'm big history fan. Viking is one of the areas that I love the most, and this was just a joy to watch from start to finish. Simple story, but it's very effective. Right, into my top 10. And in number 10, I have Bones and All. I'm kind of a sucker for cannibal films. I'm not going to lie. I'm a really big horror guy. I really enjoy coming of age films. Mix them together and you get this really powerful 2 lead performances. Timothy Chalamet, Taylor Russell had such good chemistry together on screen. It got no awards love, unfortunately. I do think it should have got some. I thought the cinematography is really good. Definitely a slightly weaker protagonist, but I thought it's fantastic and a really emotional ending that stuck with me. In at number 9, I have Tar. Obviously, Cate Blanchett, absolutely incredible performance. Probably my favorite actress of all time, if I'm going to be honest. Is probably one of the most dialogue-driven films I've ever seen, and I like how Todd Field just goes straight into that. The first scene is just so dialogue-driven. You know that right from the start. You're kind of first scene, you're in it or you're out. That's it. I absolutely loved it. In at number 8, I have The Batman. This This is kind of dropped slightly on rewatches, to be honest. I think Robert Pattinson is probably my favorite Batman already. I think the first act is absolutely brilliant. Probably my favorite superhero introduction ever. The monologues are brilliant. The cinematography is amazing. The score is incredible. I do think the last act slightly loses it. Still think it's good, but I think it's a slip in quality from the first two. But nonetheless, still good enough for the top 10. Banshees in number 7. Also fallen slightly on rewatch, but nonetheless, the screenplay is absolutely incredible. Lead performances are so strong. Mark McDonagh is definitely one of the best working directors today. You know, you're going from In Bruges and 3 Billboards in Ebbing, Missouri, which both I absolutely love to bits. But yeah, really strong film overall. Love the Irish setting and really good. Number 6. A film that has definitely dropped a bit actually, as I've kind of muddled around my rankings, but Top Gun in number 6 definitely did have this at a 5 out of 5. Earlier on, kind of last year, but yeah, I kind of delved into film deeper into that kind of last half of 2022, and this has dropped definitely. But nonetheless, I think this is the third act. This film is one of my favorite third acts for an action film ever. It's just full adrenaline. The filmmaking on display here is incredible. Tom Cruise I just absolutely love as an actor and what he does. I know we spoke about it earlier, but just really good soundtrack, really good score, and just such great time. Ryan or Will, who's next?
Good list. Yeah, I'll step up to the bat here. We've kind of already gone over a lot of the movies that I've going to talk about, so I'll kind of go super quick fire here. But I'm going to give shout outs a little bit further down my list, so not my 11 and 12 per se, but I wanted to give some love for Watcher. I thought that was a really good film of 2022, and 13 Lives as well. I know Paul Thomas Anderson loves that movie. It's based on a true story. Good shout outs. But now we can crack on to my top 10. At 10, I got The Northman by Robert Eggers. I think it's his most accessible work, maybe simplest, but still very well shot nonetheless. At number 9, I got Banshees of Inisherin. Again, Oscar said everything you need to say. Martin McDonagh, fantastic director. He didn't miss with Banshees. Give it a 4 to 5. I also gave Northman 4 to 5. At number 8, I have Everything Everywhere All at Once. I wasn't as high as the Oscars on it, but I still think it's a phenomenal film. A really good blend of genres. 4 to 5 for me. At number 7, I got Top Gun Maverick. I think this is maybe the best action movie ever, which is a crazy take, but it's really good, really immersive. Saw it in theaters and IMAX. It's just really exceptional. And the number 6, I got Nope by Jordan Peele. I think this one kind of flew under the radar a little bit. It could be argued as one of Peele's best. So I thought Nope was really fantastic, and it slides in at my number 6 slot. Ryan, 10 through 6?
Yeah, great list. Yeah, like we've all said, it's such a stacked year, so anything outside my top 10 is, I still think they're really good. But I'll give my honourable mention to Chachavio Smooth. That came out just a month after I graduated, so it really resonated with me with all the things that happened in the movie. And of course, Cooper Raiff, his second film, he's such a great up-and-coming director. But I'll go on to number 10. I've got Top Gun Maverick. I liked the original. It was the first time I'd watched it, so I didn't have that like nostalgia about it. I didn't think it was anything special. But Tom Cruise and Kaczynski did produce one of my favourite blockbusters of this decade. It's a huge spectacle, obviously, with the practical shooting of the jets. Actually putting cameras in the jets is still crazy to think about. It's a great use of returning characters. It really is a good like remake kind of sequel. And I think they really implemented all them well into the story. But the main thing that stood out was like the sound, and it was really special in IMAX to see that. And the soundtrack, which created a very memorable like action flick, I think. Number 9, I've got Decision to Leave. For me, it was the best international picture of that year. Of course, Park Chan-wook's one of the best working directors now, returning to deliver another great mystery thriller. Incredible cinematography, editing, and I think a lot of these films like to sprinkle on a lot of romance, so that really was like a great side of it, making a great romance on top of the mystery. At 8, I've got one of the heavy hitters that came out early on in the year. I've got Eggers' The Northman. I think it was really cool to see him given like a high budget, so that he can make it like a big fantasy epic. It's a revenge story that we've fairly familiar with. We've seen it before, but I did really love Eggers' Nordic twist on it. And of course, he's kind of grown a reputation of having phenomenal cinematography, and he does deliver that once again. I think it was one of the best looking films of the year. But yeah, it's up there with The Lighthouse in his filmography for me, and I really adored it. But I do hope he returns to his horror roots, because I didn't really like that he kind of strayed away from that, but still a great film. Number 7, I get Banshees. Martin McDonagh's best film, maybe the funniest film of the year. He's truly a director that's incredible at blending drama and comedy, and this is no different than his filmography. This truly was like the year of Colin Farrell. He's got the Batman after Yang, and I think this was his best performance. Number 6, I've got one of the best action films ever made. Oscar's not going to like this, but I've got Avatar 2. I think it was the blockbuster of the year. Not only a sequel that improved on the original technology, it technically improved, but in my opinion, it also improved on the story beats from the first. I think it's a ridiculous statement to say that the screenplay is really weak here. Cameron is a master of providing the highest tier of sci-fi action blockbusters, and it hasn't changed here. People are wrong about this completely. It's obvious how much of a life passion project it is for him, delivering a genuinely great story of the characters here. I think it's successful in continuing Sully's journey in the world, and how he sees his adopted family, and how he has to deal with that in the new terrain and risks that come with the world. And I think it was one of the most immersive experiences I've ever had, advancing cinema technical wise. Of course, the visuals are amazing. CGI is crazy. This is another example of crazy filmmaking, developing new technology. Like, they had to shoot underwater, learn how to breathe for a long period of time. Yeah, it's just insane stuff from James Cameron once again. It showed that he's still got the magic that made him the greatest action director of all time. So that's my 6.
Another Canadian. Just want to shout out James Cameron. Another Canadian.
Painful stuff to listen to. Painful.
Good list. Really good list.
All
All right, Alex, you gonna knock off 5?
Yeah, so my number 5, one of my all-time favorite films growing up was the original Top Gun. It's just had such a strong influence on me. And, when I walked into Top Gun Maverick, my expectation was, a corny legacy sequel, money grab. But I'm like, I like these characters. I'm a Top Gun fan. I'm here as a fan. I'm not expecting anything great. And, wow, did that exceed my expectations. It was such an incredible cinematic experience, and a reflection of everything of why not just movies are great, but it's great to see movies, the way they're made in an actual theater, in an IMAX if accessible. And it's a film, it's not even really like, you don't talk about Top Gun Maverick because of the story as much as just the cinematic experience of it. And, I also love cars and, anything that moves very fast and can move human beings at high speeds. So, just really feeling like you were in those jets was just such an incredible experience. Unfortunately, as much as I love the sound design, the second half of the film they didn't use the soundtrack as much as the first one did, which is probably most people don't mind, but just based on my view of the original Top Gun, was a little disappointing, even though I love the sound design. But like I said, just absolutely exceeded my expectations. I was so happy to see it get the credit it deserved, and for the first time in a while, have the highest grossing movie of the year be something that wasn't a Marvel movie, even though actually Avatar did take over. But just the fact that there were something like this was with the practical filmmaking had such an impact on people. Also, shout out to Miles Teller, another Philly guy, so shout out to him. Big Phillies fan, was with us all October in all the playoff games, so shout out to him. And yeah, I'm always going to prefer the original Top Gun, but this was still just an incredible experience and was everything that makes cinema great. Absolutely loved it.
Cool. So for me, my number 5, I've gone for the best picture winning Everything Everywhere All at Once. For me, I was I wasn't kind of like joining on kind of the train like after people had kind of seen this, because obviously it came out in the UK about a month and a bit later than America. I'd like seen the trailers, like when the trailers were coming out. I was really, really excited for this. I just kept on rewatching the trailers, and whenever I finally got to see it, kind of blew my expectations away, to be honest. It kind of lived up to every bit of excitement that I had for it. Obviously, as the Oscars tell you, some incredibly powerful performances. They just felt so heartfelt, and it's really nice to see some actor resurgences. Obviously, Michelle Yeoh and Ke Huy Quan, just lovely to see them winning those awards. And one of the most effective multiverse stories. And the multiverse story is probably the most drained out story in the 2020s. And only two films have done it well so far. This and Across the Spider-Verse. Maybe I'm forgetting one. But yeah, it's just a really, really clever use of that. Just such an inventive film. I think has some really, really good commentary and kind of motherhood and reconnection, which is kind of a really common, not necessarily a common trope, but I think it's, well, yeah, it is a common trope, but I think one that when it's used well is really, really, really effective now. Also some great commentary on kind of identity and kind of looking back on yourself, and I really, really enjoyed that. Some of the best editing of the year as well, are kind of scenes where you kind of think you're gonna have like epilepsy or something, is just the quickest editing you've ever seen, but it's absolutely brilliant. Loads of my scenes had jaw on the floor. Loved it. Very high 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Very nice. Yeah, I was just missed out on my top 5. But on my 5th spot, I'm going to go for maybe an underrated pick, maybe a film that not a lot of people have seen, but I'm going Cha Cha Real Smooth by director, actor, and writer Cooper Raiff. This is his second film. I thought it was just brilliant. I was recently graduated when I watched it, so maybe there is that emotional attachment there because it does really connect on a fresh out of college vibe and theme. But I just thought it was really well done. The writing is really nuanced, even though it's his second film. It stars Dakota Johnson, so for you Dakota Johnson lovers, great performance by her. Honestly, she never steps a foot wrong in terms of when she's on the big screen. I think she's a phenomenal actor, and she does a great job in this. Again, I said Cooper Raiff, he is the actor. He acts in this as well. Does a fantastic job. The dialogue is just really real. And it's really tight, nice, heartfelt, really nice, warming movie, I'd say. But yeah, Cha Cha Real Smooth in my 5th spot.
Nice. 5th, I've got The Fabelmans. I think maybe a misunderstood film from people that haven't seen it. It's an incredibly family-driven drama hidden behind like the facade of a generic biopic that you'd usually see for like Oscars. It's somehow one of the most underrated films of the year, I think. We kind of follow Sammy Fabelman, which is kind of represents Spielberg as he was a young kid, as he grows to love cinema from a young boy, going to pictures for the first time, and we see like as he grows up, how his love for cinema grows. But the thing that really elevates this for me is like the insight into Spielberg's family life at a young age. I can't go into much detail because of spoilers, but it's kind of where the heart of the film is, I think. The acting all around is like Oscar worthy, I think. Michelle Williams has become one of my favourite actresses working today, I think. Although this isn't a role that's really unusual from our usual films. I think it was her best to date, and of course, Paul Dano is great in everything he does. He was definitely deserving of his. Oh, he's really deserving of an Oscar win coming soon, hopefully. But the real snub was Gabriel LaBelle, the lead. He somehow didn't get a nomination, even though he's leading a Spielberg film at 20 years old, which is just crazy, and he stole the show. So I really think he did deserve a nom. That was a snub that we missed earlier. Yeah, what's your number 4, Alex?
So my number 4. So growing up, before I even knew what a director was, what a director did, there was one director who I always knew, and that was Steven Spielberg. And his films just had such an incredible impact on me in my young years, and just growing up with Spielberg in movies. They were some of the movies that really taught me movies and got me to really love the craft and see a real storyteller behind the camera. So Spielberg's had. So when I first saw this movie, like I was so excited for this movie a week before it. I talked in our Oppenheimer episode about how I put headphones in to not watch the trailer. When I saw Amblin come up in the theater, I literally walked out of the theater because I didn't want anything spoiled for me. I was on time to the theater, which for me is very rare. Like that's how excited I was for this movie. And just seeing Steven Spielberg, who's normally more of an entertaining kind of mainstream director, taking on such a personal project, which I just love to see someone of his talent do, because it's not something he does very often in his filmography. And I love the way he uses silent films to tell a story, and all the silent films within the film, I think, just so brilliantly convey things that aren't being said. And I think so much about the film is what's going on that no one talks about. Whether it's I won't get into spoilers, but there's a lot of things that are going on in this life that are very obvious visually, that are not addressed in the dialogue by the characters. Just like in real life, how in real families there's things that are unsaid that are kind of dark truths that are underneath. And he also really highlights the what's cut out of the movies, like the things that are cut out and not in the movie, like with the camping video, for example. What he cuts out of that film is kind of reflective of what will later happen in the when he does that film later in the film. And it's he really showcases us that there's always more to the story than what we see on screen in the film. And yeah, it was just such a very it was an incredible experience for me to see such a personal story from a filmmaker who's had an incredible impact on my own life, and whose work is, just films I could watch over and over again. So I'll leave it there. Oscar, what's your number 4?
Number 4, and the last of my 4.5 now. So the very, very top of my 4.5 for me, I have Decision to Leave. I think going into this, I had seen Old Boy, and I'm not sure if at this time I'd seen the rest of the Vengeance trilogy, but I hadn't really seen much Park Chan-wook, but that was kind of the main driving force for me going to see this. The trailers had me semi-interested, but this just absolutely blew me away. Park Chan-wook, as we know, has kind of become this master of this kind of erotic love thriller, and this definitely isn't kind of as erotic as some of his other kind of thrillers, but it kind of really surprised me because it just totally wasn't what I was expecting. The trailers kind of sold it as more of a kind of a thriller, but it surprised me in kind of the best possible way. I think it's just really, really deep kind of character study on these two people, and ultimately, as we've mentioned before, really, really robbed at the Oscars. I think this should have won editing over Everything Everywhere All at Once. I thought, because you see a lot of tiresome kind of phone editing, the use of kind of where it just comes up with the text in films now, but I thought the way he uses this, the way he encompasses kind of technology in this was really, really clever. The kind of the shot selection, especially in that the last act, was absolutely stunning. The ending is so emotional. The climax is brilliant. It's such a good just payoff for a film, and I know a lot. It's been more polarizing than I realized, actually, kind of looking back on mutual scores. But I absolutely love this film to bits, and I hope Park Chan-wook just continues making films, because he's one of my favorite directors of all time, inside my top 5.
It's a really good pick. Good pick for 4. I've yet to see it, though. I have not seen Decision to Leave. So if you're going to yell at me in the comments saying Decision to Leave is not on this guy's list, save it. I haven't seen it. Park Chan-wook and I have a very rocky relationship, okay? Some of his films I just don't really connect with. I digress. My number 4 film is, again, another niche one, but I thought a really good one. The first directorial debut on this list. It's On the Count of Three by Jared Carmichael. I thought this was really exceptionally done. It's a pretty tightly written story, but it conveys so much emotion. It's really two main characters, Jared Carmichael and Christopher Abbott, who carry the entire film on their back. Their chemistry and relationship is pretty phenomenal. And it's a pretty gripping and heavy emotional film based on the subject matter. It kind of has to do with suicide and depression, but they go on this rocky day of existential finding each other, you could say. And it's just really good. I thought it really stuck with me after I watched it. And I think that characterized any good film for me. So On the Count of Three in my fourth spot, ironically.
Yeah, very nice pick. It's a very underrated film from this year. In fourth, I've got the best Batman film ever made, The Batman. Before this masterpiece, I had kind of accepted that we would never get a Gotham that like matched the dark, broody atmosphere of the Tim Burton movies, And obviously Nolan had a more realistic version of Gotham that just didn't do it for me. So the combination of Matt Reeves and Greg Fraser not only crafted like the best Gotham I think we've seen, but also managed to have cinematography that was even matched like the heavy hitters from outside of comic book movies, and was definitely one of the best of that year. The detective approach to Batman, I think, is infinitely more interesting to me personally. Robert Pattinson is my Batman now. Seeing Bruce Wayne early on like this is just such a great perspective of him. Previous live action films like tend to focus on like the cocky billionaire side, but I think that was a really nice change to see this side of Bruce Wayne. So yeah, Alex, what's your number 3?
Yes, for the second time, I'm going to be copying Ryan's pick. My number 3 is the best superhero movie of all time, The Batman. Batman's, always been my favorite superhero, and the animated series when I was younger really kind of got me into film noir, which now is easily one of my favorite genres and styles of film. And just the way I think neo-noirs often have the pitfall of they don't have the same contrast as black and white, and it makes them not as nice to look at. But this really fixed that problem by the bold and prominent colors that it uses mixed in with the darkness of film noir. But also just the way Greg Fraser uses out of focus images with such an innovative technique used in a mainstream superhero movie, which is rare. And it definitely made me question, different ways that images can be used to tell stories. And yeah, I mean, it's just incredible action. The score for Michael Giacchino is absolutely incredible. Like, I just had it on repeat. I still listen to it frequently. Like, it's incredible. And I really just love more than anything the relationship between Batman and the city of Gotham. I think Gotham as a city is such a part of the character, and I like movies that are about environments, especially movies about cities and the character's relationship with the city. And this film really explored that area of Batman, in addition to the detective noir style, which I also love. And I feel like it definitely made me like The Dark Knight less. I always appreciated it, but I've always had issues with it. And this film was kind of gave us that masterpiece of a Batman film that also it still was true to the things I love about the character, like the tone of it and the atmosphere in Gotham as a city. So I really love how they explored that. The voiceover, my biggest criticism is I don't know why they don't use the voiceover more. Like that opening was just such an incredible sequence, and just the fear with the shadows that there's so much I could say about it. I love that they even had the balls to make it a 3-hour epic. Like it was such an incredible experience, and really took the superhero genre just to a whole new height, and really showcased that it can be a super entertaining film while also being a innovative artistic film with brilliant visual storytelling on just every level. So the Batman absolutely blew me away, and just would be number 1 in a lot of other years, honestly. So Oscar, what's your number 3?
My number 3, definitely for me, my most rewatched film of last year. Combination of my 2 favorite genres. I have Nope in at number 3. It's just a sci-fi horror masterclass. There's nothing more enjoyable for me than seeing a perfect mix of my 2 favorite genres, like I've just said. I hold this film a lot kind of closer to Get Out than other people do in kind of Jordan Peele's rankings. I still think Get Out is my number 1 in his filmography, but I would have Nope right up there. I've seen this a total of 7 times since it released a year ago in this country. I just kept on watching it and falling in love with everything, all the details in this film. I think it's the attention.
My number 3 on the year is Babylon, Damien Chazelle's masterpiece, his biggest and most ambitious film, you could say. Critics didn't love it, but I certainly did. It's beautifully written, just like every one of his other films. There's 3 different storylines that kind of intertwine pretty seamlessly, and the pacing is just perfect. There's that one scene where they go to the underground of LA that drags a little bit, but I think other than that, you just bounce around from location to location. You love every second you spend with these characters, and it's just a really drug-induced thrill ride through, LA and a depiction of Hollywood. I thought Babylon was exceptional. Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, and standout Diego Calva, who maybe outacts the other 2 A-listers, which maybe it's a hot take, maybe not, but I thought he was absolutely exceptional. I hope to see him in more future projects, considering how good he was in Babylon. But yeah, I need not say more because Damien Chazelle. When there's a Chazelle on the film, you know it's going to be a banger. Babylon, absolutely no different. My third favorite of the year, such a banger.
Yeah, and third, I have one of my favourite directorial debuts from Charlotte Wells' Aftersun. Probably the biggest surprise of last year. I did have it on my radar. There was a lot of praise coming out of Cannes Film Festival, but yeah, never in a million years did I think it would have as much impact on me as it did. We don't get as many great films coming out from Scotland, so it's always nice. And it really is a big thing about Paul Mescal because it was such a convincing accent. If I didn't know who he was going in before that, I really thought like he would have been Scottish. It was that convincing. Such a comforting film to begin with. I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but it's very nostalgic of times like going on holiday as a kid. And then yes, as we see the further relationship develop between Callum and Sophie, like Charlotte Wells just decides to rip your heart out. I was a mess after seeing this. A particular scene without spoilers that stood out is when he purchases a carpet. That might sound stupid if you've not seen it, but if you know, you know. But yeah, my third of the year. Alex, what's your second?
Yeah, so I honestly don't know how this isn't number one because pretty much any other year would be, and it probably deserves Best Picture because it's such a uniquely incredible film. But once again, it's the same pick as Ryan. It's Aftersun. This film, it's not cinematic in the way we think of cinematic with big scale necessarily, but it's such a cinematic film in its approach to storytelling where it comes from just such a deep, intuitive place where you feel like Charlotte Wells just kind of knows where to put the camera just based on her own intuition because the story just feels so personal to her in every single moment of it. And she really tells the story using everything except the dialogue. It's the images, the lighting, the tone, the body language, just the sound design, the atmosphere. She's using every single element except for dialogue to tell her story and convey the emotions of this piece. And there's just it's so comforting but yet so dreadful at the same time. And her kind of innovative use of not really having a plot that she's moving forward, yet there's this sense of dread that we know something's coming that we don't want to happen. And just she creates such an immersive atmosphere, which is why I think also it's so important to see a film like this in theaters, even though it's not what most people think of as a cinematic theater movie. And yeah, like I heard good things before it, and it just absolutely blew me away. And just it was when the credits hit, I didn't even want to leave my seat. Like I just sat there with so many feelings, thoughts, and emotions about it. It's hats off to Charlotte Wells, one of the greatest top 5 best directorial debuts ever, I think, and she just knocked it out of the park. Like I said, I don't know how it's not number one because it's just that incredible of a film. So. Oscar, if your mic's working.
Yeah, I think it should be all good now if you guys can hear me well. No, that's right. So in the middle of where I was, back at number 3 for me, Nope. Just this film just had some really, really great commentary on kind of Hollywood and the spectacle and kind of what it will take to get the Oprah shot, as the film calls it, kind of that people will stop at nothing for kind of not just for film but for greed in general. Look, people die in this film just looking up in the sky, and I think that's just such a brilliant commentary on what's happening in kind of Hollywood now and what's kind of evolved over time. I also think this film is a lot scarier than people give it kind of credit for. Kind of maybe at face value, kind of what happens there. There's literally no jump scares in this film, but there's some really, really horrifying imagery. Obviously, people know kind of the scene at kind of the ranch where I won't go into spoilers, but a lot of people died. There's some really, really horrifying imagery there. But I think Peele as a director and his screenplays as well, just such strong direction here. Robbed of Best Director, in my opinion, as a nomination. But yeah, swiftly, I'll move into my number 2 now. And it's the same for the past 2 people. My number 2 is also Aftersun. In my opinion, A24's best film by far it's such a toned down film, but it's some of the most powerful character work I've ever seen. Everything just feels so real. The 2 lead performances are absolutely incredible. Obviously, a lot of Oscar robs, and a lot of heartbreaking scenes in this film, and kind of, I love the way it kind of implements kind of music scenes. Kind of a lot of people are remembering this film because of the film, like the Under Pressure scene in particular. But for me, it's every time I hear "Losing My Religion" by REM, every time that comes on my playlist, that's the song that reminds me of that film. And that scene that kind of broke my heart so much. It's one of my favorite songs ever. So hearing that when that came on in the theater was, and especially because it's a kind of a karaoke song, when she sung that, it was really, really personal. But not much to add than what Alex and Ryan have already said. Is it deserves every bit of praise that everyone's given it. Will?
Great take. I think that's a fantastic take. But I'm going to break the chain. I'm not going to have After Sun in the 2 slot. I'm going to go with The Batman. Time for my spiel on this absolute masterpiece. I think Reeves does a fantastic job of grounding Gotham in this pretty dingy but realistic setting, and he gets the characters to play within that setting so perfectly. Like the Riddler is something that could be so conceivably real, right? There could be Riddler online anywhere. So I think the fact that this is so grounded in reality makes it really digestible for non-comic book or non-superhero fans. Like I said, it stands alone as a detective noir. It's absolutely phenomenal the way that Pattinson and Commissioner Gordon bounce off one another just when they're doing their sleuthing. I think it's incredible. In terms of Batman as a character, I think they did a really good job embodying this kind of year 2 Batman that Reeves kind of set out to achieve here. He's still coming to grips with the fact that his parents are dead. He's still coming to grips that Gotham is his city. He's still coming to grips that he is Batman, right? There's a lot of development going on underneath the mask. And we kind of get this gothic emo version of Bruce Wayne, who's kind of almost living in his own peril. He doesn't want to come to grips with reality just yet, and I think that was a really good route to take for the first Batman movie. And like I said, in terms of him, Batman, like working on Batman as a character, I think the fact that he kind of loses in the end is really powerful because, you know, he's not the polished Batman that we know. Like, people are still referring him to vengeance on the street. There's not a credible Batman out there just yet. So when he's falling off the building and takes that massive blow, you know, when Riddler blows up the seawalls, like, he's losing. He's not actually winning. So I found that aspect really fun, but a really, really complete film, a really complete Batman film and detective film. But that is my number 2 of the year, Batman, Matt Reeves.
Yeah, and second, I've got a film that I'm surprised to not see as high on your list. So I have the Best Picture winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Another crazy film by the genius director combo, the Daniels. Probably not as weird as their last film, Swiss Army Man, but it's definitely up there. A film that jumped into the multiverse train just at the right time, just before it got stale. This film probably shouldn't work, but somehow the Daniels managed to blend a wider range of genres into just one here, and somehow managed to pull it off into a tightly written screenplay. Of course, it wasn't only them. I do think this wouldn't have worked nearly as well if it wasn't for the phenomenal cast that they managed to arrange. Lots of actors that have had a lot of experience in their past, but maybe haven't got the appreciation that they have. Like the appreciation that they deserve throughout their career. Everybody knows what kind of film that they're in, and they managed to play it off perfectly, I think. Of course, it isn't just all crazy action and comedy. At its core, it's like a really heartwarming family story at the centre about a daughter-parent relationship and an analysis of like the generational pressure that's put on immigrant families and their like children. So yeah, I think overall it was definitely an incredible film and fully deserving of the Best Picture win that it got. So Alex, what is your number 1 of the year?
I want to thank everyone here for inspiring me to change my number 1 pick to the true best movie of 2022, a film that we're going to look back on years from now as probably maybe the greatest movie of all time, and that is Sonic 2.
Oh my god.
No,
dude, I was like, where is he going with this?
So my number 1 pick is not only my favorite film of 2022, and I also want to say that my entire top 4 all cracks my top 100 favorite movies. That says a lot about this film year, that there's 4 films that are in my top 100 favorites. But my number 1 pick is not only my favorite of the year, it's my favorite film of the 21st century, and that is Damien Chazelle's masterpiece, Babylon. It's a true magnum opus from him, which is a showcase of everything that makes cinema great. So many different ways to tell your story visually, whether it's the way every department brings their A game or just how he evolves the storytelling with, in the silent era, having it very loud and over the top, constantly moving camera, to the era of the early talkies where you have it's very like structured and crisp editing, static compositions, much more quiet and more of like a rhythmic type of approach to his editing, and then getting into the later portion based on the gangster films of the 30s that was very popular with that kind of high tension and high sense of danger at all times. So I think he evolves his story and evolves the way he tells it so well to match what's going on from a story perspective. So many different styles, and then of course Justin Hurwitz just absolutely brought his A game. There's so many distinct different types of tracks rather than a lot of films will have that one thematic piece and they kind of the rest of the score is different versions of it. But Justin Hurwitz just has so many different compositions in this score, all used incredibly well. There's pretty much wall-to-wall music in the film, and when there's not, there's such a rhythmic genius to the way the sound effects are used. And it's everything a film should be. It's such a masterclass. If anyone doesn't know what a director does, like look at this film. Like that is a vision of a true director and artist. And it's an absolute masterpiece on every level. And I also, of course, love films that have a lot of atmosphere and things going on around the characters rather than the world just kind of doesn't exist. It's just watching the isolated characters speak. There's always things going on around the characters. There's always a distinct world, and it's a very active film, and just on every level, it's a perfect movie in my opinion. And I can only hope to make something half as good one day because it's a perfect movie in my opinion. Absolute. Damien Chazelle knocked it out of the park. Perfect movie.
Well, copying right along again, my number one, without a doubt, also is Babylon. I've been in love with Damien Chazelle for ages. Whiplash, La La Land, two of my favorite films. Obviously, again, being in the UK, we had another delayed release, so I had to wait till January to see this. So my hype kind of over that month, the gap between USA and the release here was just building and building. This is the film I've seen most times in cinemas. I've seen it 5 times. It just gets better every single time. I absolutely love it to bits. It's just 3 hours. I know, like Will described it earlier. Just 3 hours Hollywood debauchery, just cocaine fueled, and it is absolutely mad. But it is just absolutely brilliant. It is just so entertaining from start to finish. There's like the all-out battle scene in like the first kind of 30 minutes of the film just had me dying of laughter for about 10 minutes. Hurwitz's score is just absolutely incredible. You can just hear all the way from Guy and Madeline on the Park Bench's first film. You can hear just bits of La La Land in that, and then there are similarities between La La Land and the Babylon score. Just seeing that carry on through all of the 5 films that Chazelle and Hurwitz have done together, and the many more that they will do, is just so good to see. Obviously, massive influence that Sunset Boulevard had on this film and kind of the characters within it. Obviously, we see the clear rise and fall of a lot of characters and kind of the insignificance, the realization of how kind of insignificant a lot of stars were in those days. And even now, like, they'll just live on through cinema, and a lot of them just could not accept that. And I think he portrays that brilliantly. It's just chaos, and I think it builds to a really effective climax and one of my favorite endings ever. Will, what's your number one?
Really good pick. Yeah, my number one is a film we've already heard. It is After Sun. Charlotte Wells' directorial debut, yes, was my favorite of the year. I absolutely loved this thing. I've seen it a few times now. I'm not sure if it's 4 or 5, but I've definitely seen it a few times. And I really loved how it does have that rewatch value, considering you can take on the perspective of Sophie or Colm. 2 completely different perspectives. You get the young adolescent kind of coming of age perspective with Sophie, and then obviously with Paul Mescal, a little bit different, more devastating, battling depression. But I thought it was really cool just to see these two characters kind of exist in this space, but experience such vastly different feelings. And I thought just from that emotional directing standpoint, Charlotte Wells is able to hit every single box. It's very, very real. There is a very real component to this film, like you're just on a family vacation with your dad or whatever. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was so devastating. I cried so much just sitting there when the screen went black. A very emotional and powerful film. And like Oscar said, don't sleep on the soundtrack. A couple bangers in here, a couple REM songs. So absolutely exceptional. If you haven't seen After Sun and you really want to see what a film can be and can even do, definitely check it out. It's a completely different storytelling approach that I find extremely effective, extremely emotional, and I can't praise Charlotte Wells enough. What an exceptional film. Whatever she releases next, I'll be her first fan to watch it. But yeah, that's After Sun. So fantastic.
Yeah, great number one pick. But here I'm going to copy Alex and Oscar. My number one of the year is probably the most underappreciated by the general audience of the year. Babylon. I'm a sucker for films about making films, and this is probably one of the biggest and most extravagant to do it. Very much riding off the back of Sunset Boulevard and Singing in the Rain. We have Chazelle's masterpiece that explores Hollywood right at the end of the silent era. We see insane drug-filled parties, the highs of Hollywood life at the time, and we see the deep blows as well as we see the people try to adjust to talkies and all the struggles that they went through at that time. Of course, a phenomenal cast, Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, some of the best working today, and a debut from Diego Calva, who I really hope continues to work in movies in the future. Of course, one of the best elements that we've continuously talked about today, the score by Justin Hurwitz. I'm still playing it on repeat today. He's one of my top artists on Spotify, like I said, and the score pretty much taken over like the whole year. Easily one of the biggest snubs of all time, and just the movie overall, it's somehow not even Chazelle's best in my opinion, but easily the best of the decade. So yeah, that kind of rounds up all of our 2022 rankings.
So that's our 2022 rankings. Drop your own in the comments below, and let us know how you feel about ours, and like, subscribe, all that shit. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another great episode. Take care.